There was a season in my life when I felt like I was running as fast as I could, yet somehow I was getting nowhere. Every morning I woke up before the sun, went to work, put in long hours, and gave everything I had. I wasn't lazy, I wasn't wasting my time. I was doing exactly what everyone told me to do: work hard, stay focused, and eventually life would get better. But no matter how much effort I put in, the result was always the same. My paycheck would hit my bank account, and before I even had time to breathe, it was almost gone. Rent, groceries, gas, insurance, phone bills, unexpected expenses that seemed to appear out of nowhere. One payment after another slowly drained everything I had worked so hard to earn. By the last week of every month, my account looked painfully familiar, almost empty. It didn't matter how carefully I planned. It didn't matter how much I promised myself that this month would be different. Somehow, I always ended up back at the same place, financially exhausted, emotionally frustrated, completely stuck. After living like that for months, I finally convinced myself that I knew what the problem was. I just don't make enough money. That thought became my daily excuse. If I could just get a better job, if I could just earn a bigger paycheck, then everything would finally change. At first, those thoughts gave me hope, but after a while, they became a prison. The more I repeated them in my mind, the more powerless I felt. It was like running on a treadmill. Every day I was moving, every day I was working, but I wasn't actually getting any closer to financial freedom. One quiet evening, after another stressful day, I walked outside and sat alone in the yard. The sun was beginning to set. The neighborhood had become quiet. For the first time all day, there were no notifications, no phone calls, and no distractions, just silence. I stared at the ground, wondering if life was always going to feel this way. A few minutes later, my grandfather stepped outside. He looked at me for a moment. He didn't ask questions immediately. He simply sat beside me. Sometimes the people who love you the most can tell something is wrong without you saying a single word. After a few seconds, he finally spoke. "What's on your mind? You've been carrying something heavy." I tried to smile, but I couldn't hide it anymore. I took a deep breath and said, "Grandpa, I don't understand. I work hard every single day. I do everything I'm supposed to do. But every dollar I earn disappears before the month is over. I can't build savings. I can't get ahead. It feels like no matter how much harder I work, my life never changes." He listened carefully without interrupting me. When I finished speaking, he smiled. Not because my problems were funny, but because he had heard the exact same words from countless people before me. Then he looked directly into my eyes and calmly said, "The problem isn't your paycheck. It's the way you've been taught to think about money." His answer caught me completely off guard. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I barely make enough to cover my bills. How can this possibly be a mindset problem?" He nodded. "I know why you're confused. Because most people believe money problems are solved by earning more. But that's only part of the story." Then he leaned back and continued, "The biggest mistake people make isn't earning too little. It's depending on one single source of income for their entire life. They spend 40 years protecting one paycheck, and then spend another 40 years wondering why they never felt financially secure." His words echoed in my mind. I had never looked at money that way before. Then he asked me a question so simple, yet so powerful, that it completely changed the direction of our conversation. "If your employer called you tomorrow morning and told you your job was gone, what would you do?" I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. My mind went completely blank. I searched for an answer, any answer. But the truth was impossible to ignore. If I lost my job tomorrow, everything would fall apart. I had no second income, no backup plan, no emergency savings, no business, no investments, nothing. For the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't financially stable. I was financially dependent, and there was a huge difference between the two. My grandfather slowly nodded as if he already knew what I had just realized. Then he quietly said, "Now you understand why so many hardworking people live with constant anxiety. They're not afraid because they're lazy. They're afraid because one paycheck is carrying the weight of their entire future." He stood up, brushed the dust off his jeans, and smiled. "Come with me. I want to show you something. Something that completely changed the way I think about money." Without asking another question, I stood up and followed him. The evening air was cool as we walked through the neighborhood. For a few minutes, neither of us said a word. My grandfather always had a habit of letting silence do the teaching before he spoke. Finally, he looked at me and asked, "Tell me something. If someone gave you 1 extra hour every single day, what would you do with it?" I laughed. "Honestly, I'd probably scroll through my phone, watch a few videos, maybe relax. It's only 1 hour. What difference could 1 hour possibly make?" He smiled as if he had been waiting for that exact answer. And that's exactly why most people never change their financial future. I looked at him confused. He continued, "People underestimate small amounts of time because they only look at what 1 hour can do today. They never think about what 1 hour can become after 30 days, 6 months, or even 5 years. He picked up a small stone from the ground and held it in his hand. "Do you know how mountains are shaped? They aren't formed by one massive event. They're shaped little by little over thousands of years. Success works the same way. 1 hour won't make you wealthy tonight, but 1 focused hour every day can completely change your future." His words stayed with me as we kept walking. A few blocks later, we stopped in front of a small corner coffee stand. The owner was greeting customers with a smile while pouring fresh coffee into paper cups. The place wasn't fancy. There were no expensive decorations, no giant signs, just a hard-working man serving people after sunset. I watched him for a minute before asking, "Does he own this full-time?" My grandfather shook his head. "No. He works construction all day. He leaves home before sunrise. He spends 8 or 9 hours on job sites. And when most people go home to watch television, he comes here. He opens this coffee stand every evening." I looked at the man again. He looked tired, but he also looked proud. Every customer who stopped by was another step toward building something of his own. My grandfather pointed toward him. "He's not a millionaire. He isn't famous. But he understands something that many people never do. He decided that 1 paycheck would never be responsible for his family's future. So instead of complaining, he started building another stream of income. 1 customer at a time, 1 evening at a time, $1 at a time." I stood there quietly. For years, I had believed wealth was something people stumbled into overnight. Maybe they got lucky. Maybe they found the perfect job. Maybe they were simply born into the right family. But standing there, watching that man serve coffee after working an entire day, I realized something different. Financial freedom wasn't always built through giant opportunities. Sometimes, it was built through small decisions repeated over and over again. As we continued walking, my grandfather finally explained what every successful side income needs. There are only 3 things you absolutely need: time, a valuable skill, and patience. He held up 1 finger. First, time. You don't need 5 free hours every day. You don't even need 2. If you can honestly dedicate 30 minutes or 1 focused hour every day, that's enough to begin. The problem isn't that people don't have time. The problem is they spend their free time consuming instead of creating. Then he raised a 2nd finger. Second, build a valuable skill. Learn something that helps other people. People will always pay for value. You can learn video editing, graphic design, writing, copywriting, social media management, teaching, coding, photography, home repairs, or almost any skill that solves a real problem. The internet has made learning easier than ever, but learning only matters if you actually practice. Then he lifted his 3rd finger. And finally, patience. He stopped walking and looked directly into my eyes. This is where most people fail. They expect results after 1 week. They expect success after 1 month. They compare their beginning to someone else's 10th year. And when nothing happened immediately, they quit. He smiled. But success doesn't reward people who start. It rewards people who stay consistent. The longer you keep learning, the better your skills become. The better your skills become, the more valuable you become. And when your value grows, your income eventually follows. I couldn't stop thinking about what he had just said. For years, I had been asking myself the wrong question. How can I make more money? Now, a better question entered my mind. How can I become more valuable? That single question changed the way I looked at my future, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt hope. But my grandfather smiled and said, "Understanding this lesson is only the beginning. The next step is learning how to take action." We found a quiet bench in a nearby
park, and my grandfather motioned for me to sit down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sun was beginning to disappear below the horizon, and the sky was painted with shades of orange and gold. Then he looked at me and said, "Most people think building a second income requires thousands of dollars. They're wrong. The hardest part isn't finding the money. It's finding the courage to begin." I listened carefully. He continued, "People spend years making promises to themselves. I'll start when I get a raise. I'll start when life slows down. I'll start when I have more experience. I'll start when the timing is perfect." Then he smiled. But life rarely gives you the perfect moment. If you keep waiting for perfect conditions, you'll spend your entire life waiting. Every successful business, every successful creator, and every financially free person started before they felt ready. He paused for a second before continuing. You don't have to build something huge. You only have to build something small, and then improve it every single day. I nodded. For the first time, that idea actually made sense. Then he shared 3 practical ways almost anyone could begin building another source of income. The first path is selling your skills. If you already know how to solve a problem, someone is willing to pay you for that solution. You can edit videos, write articles, design logos, build websites, tutor students, manage social media accounts, create presentations, or provide any service that makes someone else's life easier. The more problems you solve, the more valuable you become. And the more valuable you become, the more opportunities you'll attract. He continued, the second path is selling products. You don't need a giant warehouse. You don't need thousands of dollars. You can buy products and resell them. You can create handmade products. You can sell homemade food. You can print custom merchandise. You can even build a small online store from home. Every major company started by selling its very first product. No one begins with thousands of customers. They earn them one customer at a time. Then he held up his phone. And the third path is building digital income. He smiled. Today, the internet has created opportunities our generation could never have imagined. You can create videos, start a YouTube channel, become a freelancer, sell digital products, teach online, build an audience, start a newsletter, or create content that continues working for you long after you've published it. The internet allows ordinary people to build extraordinary opportunities. I could almost picture those possibilities in my mind. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like something to fear. It felt like something I could actually create. Then my grandfather leaned forward and spoke more seriously than ever before. There's one final lesson, and it may be the most important one. Consistency will always beat motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Some mornings you'll feel inspired, other mornings you won't. If you only work when you feel motivated, you'll never build anything meaningful. He looked at me and continued, most people quit after a week. Some last 2 weeks. A few make it 30 days. but almost everyone gives up before momentum has a chance to build. They don't fail because the opportunity wasn't real. They fail because they stopped showing up. He smiled. But if you keep learning, if you keep improving, if you keep taking one small step every single day, that tiny side income can eventually become something far greater than you ever imagined. I looked at him and finally asked, "So how long does it actually take? When do you start seeing results?" He smiled. "That depends on your effort, your willingness to learn, and your patience. But here's what I can promise you. If you stay committed for the next 30 days, you'll notice something changing. Maybe it won't be your bank account immediately, but your confidence will grow, your skills will improve, you'll start thinking differently. And once your thinking changes, your actions begin to change. And when your actions change consistently, your future changes too." Then he looked directly into my eyes. "So now the choice belongs to you. Will you spend the rest of your life depending on a single paycheck, always hoping nothing goes wrong? Or will you start building a second source of income, one that gives you more freedom, more confidence, and more control over your future?" That question stayed with me long after we walked home. It changed the way I looked at money. It changed the way I looked at work. And most importantly, it changed the way I looked at myself. So now, what would you choose? Would you learn a high-income skill, build a small business, create content online, or finally take the first step you've been putting off? Tell me your answer in the comments. If this story gave you a new perspective on money, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because every week we share practical lessons about money, success, discipline, and financial freedom that can help you build a better future. And never forget this: the people who change their lives aren't always the ones who start with the most money. They're the ones who decide to start.